Steven Spielberg's AI, Artificial Intelligence, is a perfectly serviceable film. It's got good acting, good production design, good directing, a solid emotional arc throughout that leaves the viewer at the end feeling relatively satisfied of the film they just watched. But that's not everything that a film needs. A film also needs to have ideas, concepts that are explored in the film. This film analysis is going to be a little different than previous film analyses because we'll be comparing and contrasting Steven Spielberg's AI artificial intelligence with what could have been with Stanley Kubrick's AI artificial intelligence. AI was originally Stanley's idea. He concepted it, and I believe he wrote the original treatment for the film. If he didn't pass away in 1999, or if he was just more efficient with filming his previous films, it's pretty well known that Full Metal Jacket and Eyes Wide Shut took way longer than initially planned. There is a world where Stanley Kubrick makes AI artificial intelligence. Before we get super deep into this analysis, if you could like the video, subscribe to the channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon, that would be great. It goes a long way to helping support the channel. Thanks. Stanley saw Steven Spielberg as a protege to him. In my humble opinion, the two have very different filmmaker styles, directing styles, and ways of how they make a film. I think a lot of that comes down to their choices of how to present a film. I think Stanley's style is far more expansive, where he tries to introduce as many ideas and concepts as possible and wants to give the viewer as much information as humanly possible. Whereas Steven Spielberg's style is far more about distilling ideas, distilling concepts, distilling things into its most purest form, which I think is what we get with David and his mom, and then the world around the two becomes somewhat blurry, somewhat unexplored, and I think leaves a lot on the table. I wouldn't say that one is inherently better than the other. It's just that maybe possibly Stanley's idea of filmmaking would be far better suited to AI, artificial intelligence. The first background detail that Spielberg kind of glosses over with a narrator that I think Kubrick would have taken the time to shown us, to explain to us better, and go into more detail would be the crumbling environment that the narrator sort of blase talks about at the beginning of the movie. The narrator basically very plainly states that our environment has become so poor that people from third world countries have all died out, and people from first world countries have had to do many great things to try and survive. We're then immediately juxtaposed into a scene where it is a group of scientists talking about how they can make a robot that is better to sell and taps into an untapped market. And I think that Spielberg kind of loses the tone with the juxtaposition of these two pieces. He kind of just glosses them over and has us plainly see them as what they are, whereas I think Kubrick would have more of a commentary on it and would flesh out the environment destruction, as well as the fact that instead of these scientists working towards trying to solve issues with our environment and make life on Earth more habitable, instead they are focusing on how to make a robot more profitable and be able to sell it to more people. And I think that this gets into a major theme that I think Kubrick would go far deeper into than Spielberg, and that is that the technology that people in this world make are there to make people more comfortable, not make their lives better or to help the world in any sort of general sense. Spielberg has never been a harsh critic of capitalism, whereas I think Kubrick has been a far harsher critic, and he would go into that and would make it far more apparent and far more obvious than the little sort of notes that Spielberg hints at. He would full on, I think, would acknowledge and state how capitalism has brought us to this point of environmental destruction, and no one's working to try and stop that. Before going to Manhattan to find the Blue Fairy, Joe tells David the quiet part out loud of the dynamic between the mechas and the humans, at least from the mechas' perspective. And it's that they aren't just dumb, subservient robots, but understand that they are at a conflict with humans. All they have to do is wait the humans out, because the humans are actively destroying themselves, and then once the environment kills all the humans, the mechas can decide to be free. They see themselves as a whole and see themselves eventually surviving, even if on an individual level they will be destroyed. And I think that just shows, that sort of very lightly hints at that there is an animosity that the mechas have towards the humans, the way the humans have an animosity towards the mechas. And once again, it's sort of a moment and sort of an idea that Spielberg kind of glosses over and doesn't fully flesh out. And this is 100% up Kubrick's alley as far as what he has explored in movies like 2001. This is very much HAL style character concepts that I think Kubrick obviously would have gone into and would have fleshed out and wouldn't have just sort of hinted at and not actually explored. And finally, another unexplored detail is the aliens' fascination with human emotion. The aliens talk very highly of the humans, which sort of contradicts this background information that we've been given throughout the film. And I think that Kubrick would have explored the fact that it seems like the aliens desperately want this emotion, and why else would they go to great lengths to uncover a robot to try and understand human emotion more? And I think that that sort of leaves on the table the conclusion at the end of the movie that David's not just only a noble being who deserves happiness and love and all these stuff that he gets from the aliens, but also the fact that he's also a more enlightened being, even more enlightened than the aliens, because the aliens are synthetic, silicone-based creatures that also lack emotion, where David has passed the Turing test and is a robot with emotion. In a lot of ways could be seen as an enlightened being. Thanks again for listening to my critique and analysis of AI, artificial intelligence, by Steven Spielberg, and I would appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to the channel, and if you'd consider supporting me on Patreon. That would go a long way to helping me make more videos. Thanks again, and see you next time.